What's up, Game Rank community? I'm here back at Gamescom, and I'm with Micheal Chu here, who is the CEO of Treehouse Games, and we're going to talk about their upcoming game, Voyagers of Nera, which is a great-looking survival. It's a big co-op. It's some seafaring adventures. It's got a great artistic style. So, yeah, welcome to Cologne, and how's the experience been so far?
Thank you. Overwhelming. It's like more people than I've been around in my entire life.
Yeah, that is the general consensus for all of us here who've been here for the first time. But yeah, tell us a bit about Voyagers of Nera. Like, what can players expect in this game?
Yeah, so it's a seafaring survival crafting game where you go and travel across like a distant magical ocean and encounter these nature spirits that are being actively hunted by monsters that are emerging from the depths of the ocean. It's your job to find them, reawaken them, bring them back to your village, and ultimately sort of retake these islands from these dark creatures from the depths.
Okay, so gameplay-wise, we sort of saw there was a lot of foraging, there's a lot of building, there's a lot of survival elements to it. So can we touch on like what the gameplay is going to be like for players? What can we expect?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the bread and butter things of a survival crafting genre, I think, are actually exactly what you want from a survival crafting experience. So the chance to actually like build a base from nothing, gather resources, of course, craft and build up a tech tree and skill points. But the things that are more unique in Voyagers of Nera are actually picking that distant like destination, that island that looks beautiful off in the distance, those huge mangrove trees where you wonder what's over there, building a ship and sailing over there with your friends, and then hopefully surviving like the crazy luminescent eel that is like tracking your ship, and ultimately finding these hugely powerful and magical spirits that are hidden in sort of like the corners of the world.
Okay, and I guess survival genre, I would say myself, when you look at the genres that are going around at the moment, I'd say Souls-like and survivals have been the two that have been really hot right now. So you're trying to get yourself into quite a saturated market. So what's going to set Voyagers of Nera apart from the rest of the games that are on the market? Like, why should people be playing your game instead of another one?
Yeah, I mean, even a few years ago, being like, oh, a cooperative survival crafting game was going to be like an important big deal. But now we're a Valheim, Pal World, and Shrouded later, and those are all phenomenal games that we love. But a lot of it comes back to like these shared adventures that you have with your friends, and that sense of exploration that you get from looking out and picking that spot on the horizon. Bring me that horizon, and going and seeing all these things in this magical, vibrant world that you don't get to see in other survival crafting games that are often much grittier and much more dark and much more about like how many nights can you survive this zombie-infested land. And then, of course, these magical spirits that you can gather that help you learn new recipes, have game-changing abilities, like changing how you move and traverse through the world. Some of the things that have been a little more exciting for early fans out of like our game announcement are seeing like you surf along the back of these like wakeboards that as a way to travel between the islands. This giant living island spirit that is sort of like the heart of the base that you build, and of course the ships and sailing.
Sure. And I mean, we've used a lot of adjectives we talked about. It's quite beautiful, it's quite vibrant. So I want to touch on the art style that you've got going here, because you were just telling me that you've got quite a small art team. So probably good to give them a bit of a shout out, but you've got such a small team here. So what has the process been like? You've only got 3 people doing the artistic style for such a huge, like basically open world game here. So what was the process like for these guys?
I mean, it's not been a straightforward path at all. It's been quite a complicated sort of endeavor. But you know, from the get-go, like a lot of our dream and purpose for why Treehouse exists in the first place is because we're like, look, the games that have been the most special for us are the ones that like allow you to have this quality time with friends. A way to have memorable experiences together, to share common goals you chase for like dozens of hours, and a way to be expressive beyond like how good are you at clicking on that head. Yeah. And so the art style was a really important part of that, which is like, hey, is this a survival crafting game that you actually want to spend time in? A space that you want to explore that is like beautiful and vibrant. And that's something that our creative director, Mitch Miller, knew from the get-go was going to be really important for like setting the tone for the game. And it doesn't mean we can't be dark. Like so much of seafaring is also that terrible tentacly monster that's like just under the surface. Yeah. But also being able to make it like beautiful and have that sunrise and have that sort of sense of wonder when you actually find something that is like warm and magical and a positive relationship you're building with this spirit in the world. And You know, they've just been really scrappy. Half of our team comes from sort of like AAA live service backgrounds, and the other half comes from indiest of indie. It just so happens that all three of our artists come from the indie, wear every hat kind of developer, and I think that hopefully comes through. Like the same person who does our animation lead does all of our VFX as well, and he does a ton of like our shot planning for like the trailer and stuff that we've released. So everyone just wears a ton of hats and cares a lot about that vision and that sort of emotional impact we want to have.
And I want to divert back because you were talking about the reception you've been getting from the fans early on since the announcement. So if I'm not mistaken, you're having a playtest every 2 weeks for Voyagers of Nera. Yeah, so let's touch on the community a bit, especially for indie games. The community is such a big deal, you know, and they have such an impact on the progression of your game. So can you touch on like what kind of influence the community has had so far and the value of that feedback that they've been giving you?
Yeah, I mean, from the game developer perspective, it always feels like you are chasing a million objectives at the same time, and it's often like this constant shell game of like what's the most important priority. But always the times that have felt the best are when we're playtesting with real players, and all the times that feel the worst are when you're like, oh, like let's push it off a little bit, and then you find yourself sort of blind, wandering through all these priorities without that sort of input or this forced return back to being like, but is it delighting that person?
Yes.
And you know, my own development history, like you know, I used to work at Riot for a long time. I worked on League of Legends, like every part of League of Legends at some point. And always a big part of that culture that I've kind of sort of taken with me is that like player feedback is ultimately the only real feedback for whether the game is good or fun or delightful or like having that emotional impact. So we've put a lot of calories into playtesting, and even right now when our community is pretty small, like right after we announced the game, it's really been more about like the quality of that communication than it is trying to go wide. Because right now we're just like, dude, how do we get 20, 30 people to check out the latest build? Is this actually hitting that feeling of like, oh wow, I built a base that's like totally different from what my friend could build? Am I getting the sense of like chaos and excitement and wonder when I'm first on that boat? And that's been so huge for helping us figure out what to do next, and for us to actually take confidence and have our excitement kind of reflected in another human being that's not so close to all the problems and complexity. So we're just kind of trying to scale that as much as we can, right? Even as we get toward later this year, we're just going to be trying to playtest more and more. We're playtesting every 2 weeks, starting to head toward like more and more sort of public facing and hopefully casting a wider net. But right now we have a crew of like maybe just a couple hundred testers that have been testing with us constantly, and we bring in like, you know, a few dozen every 2 weeks just so we always have some fresh eyeballs on the game.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So, I mean, this all sounds great, but when can we expect to see, maybe, are we looking at an early access launch? Are we looking at a full launch? When are we looking at seeing this game?
So survival crafting style, I feel like it's one of the genres that has the biggest expectation that sort of fits a lot of our development hope, which is like, hey, here's a game where we feel like we know what it is, we feel like we know what is going to delight people, but we need like just a gazillion pieces of feedback to make it the full dream of what it should be. And so we just kind of want to ramp toward that. Early access is definitely the path we want to take, and I think like survival crafting fans are super familiar with just how much of those games evolve over time. But before then, we also want to do a lot of middle steps, whether that's bigger playtests or going through Steam Demo, Steam Next Fest, so that there's a lot of opportunity for other people to check out the game. And as we can sort of like consume more and more feedback, as we're like able to ramp into, okay, is this going to be fun enough? Is this going to be fun enough? Now, what about for like this broader group of people? Are they having this time with their friends that we're hoping they're having? So all of those beats are probably going to happen in the upcoming months, and then early access sometime like in the middle-ish of next year.
Okay, cool. So we've got plenty to look forward to there. All right, well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Micheal, so thank you for your time. So how can people get involved with the playtest? Is it, can they follow you on X? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so we're posting all the time on X. We have a Steam page, Voyagers of Nera. We post like dev blogs on there like every 2 weeks, so trying to be as communicative as we can because we're asking for so much feedback from players, so you can wish list and follow us there. Follow us on X, on TikTok, YouTube, And our Discord is where we talk the most and where we actually run our playtests. So if you pop in there, you can see all of the channels that are like, hey, sign up right here. And that's literally the pool where we go through and we're like, cool, what's the next like 30, 40 people who are going to bring into the next playtest? And we do that every other week. Like literally, I have 6 emails right now that is about inviting people to this playtest coming next Wednesday.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so if you want to get involved in something crafting and survival, Voyagers of Nera might be the next one on your wish list, so yeah, take a look at that, and there'll be some more updates from the guys as the months progress. But that's us for now. We've got more Gamescom coverage coming soon, so stay tuned.